welcome to the CS Joseph podcast. My name is John, and today we're going to be talking about the INFJ and the INTJ, specifically trying to answer this question of what makes the INJs potentially the best performers of all the types, but really getting away from just a comparison of it's really more about what it takes, what it means for them to be excellent performers. And there is a deeper level there that both INJ types, the INFJ and the INTJ, can be some of the greatest performers of everyone. But there's specific ways in which they become the best performers, at least within the domain of their craft. So we're going to go over a couple points here to give you guys the context of how their functions work, and really kind of the source of tension in their minds, which actually enables their performance. So the first thing is to familiarize yourself with the battlegrounds. Now, if you're new and you haven't heard of the battlegrounds, it's something that Chris Taylor, also known as Raka on the Discord, one of our creators here, he coined the terms. It's kind of analogous to the mirror functions or the reflector functions, if you guys are familiar with those. It's putting a kind of a thematic label on the pair of reflection functions. So, for example, NI heroes like the INJs and SI demon, that is a pair of reflection functions that makes up, they push against each other, right? And that makes up a battleground. And the battleground between the hero and the demon is always called the battleground of titans, right? So we have four sets of reflection functions and four battlegrounds within our minds. But there's just one battleground that I want to tune into today to talk about the INJ types, and that is the battleground of inhibition. And what that means is it's just the relationship between the INJs, the INFJ, and the INTJs, between their inferior function, their SE inferior, and their NE nemesis. It's basically their source of anxiety and this kind of fear of not being able to do it. That's more of the inferior function. And then the nemesis, this sort of uncertainty about other people's intentions, this it can be a low-level paranoia or high-level, depending, but this sort of paranoia about things just falling apart, things going the worst possible way, right? But to answer this question, the answer is quite simple of why INJs can be the best performers. And the answer is because they have the capacity to both be aware of the sensory realm in their SE inferior and the extroverted and the intuitive realm with their extroverted intuition nemesis. What does this mean? This means that when they are practiced in a particular field, that they empower both their inferior and their nemesis, so that their inferior can be reactive and performing in the moment, but especially their nemesis, this is something that's often disregarded in these conversations. The nemesis function can help them predict and anticipate. So for the INFJ and the INTJ, when they're performing really well, when they're playing a sport, call it or a video game like Call of Duty or something like that, when they get really good at something like that, it looks like they have an insane reaction time, that they're just quickly moving from thing to thing and just having this ridiculous ability to react without thinking. But what's really going on in that situation, and this is part of any performative craft for these types, what's really going on is a acute level of anticipation, of predictability. Now, their prediction isn't going to be as strong or as constant as like any hero or any parent, right? But remember that those types also have extremely low SE. The INJs have some SE and some NE, right? But the thing that separates them in performance from, say, like the ISTJ, the ISFJ, because they have the same two functions in the battleground, they just have NE inferior and SE nemesis, is that SE is still the predominant performative function. And the inferior function still has access to the aspirational path, where the INJs can still kind of have this emulated heroic extroverted sensing with their aspirational SE and their subconscious. but they also have the ability to predict things with their NE nemesis, right? So the question here is how do they get to that point? And the answer is simple. And many of you who are familiar with Chase's work probably already know what the answer is. And the answer is practice, right? Now, it goes a little deeper than this, and it goes to a concept called the cognitive circuits, which is something that we discuss, that Chase and I discuss in the Ego Hack Your Fear course, particularly in the INFJ and the INTJ lecture. We talk about how these types can optimize their circuits to become basically the greatest performers. And I'm not going to go into all that today because there's a lot there. But if you guys want to learn the secrets basically of optimizing your performance, that would be the place to check out. But what I will tell you is that the key is practice. But the question here is why practice? If you think about the demon function for all the types, right? It's the thing that is most pushed down, most ignored. We actively try and steer around it and use and over rely on our hero. But when an INFJ or an INTJ practices, it engages their demon function. And remember that the demon function is connected to two other functions by default through access to the nemesis function. SI demon and NE nemesis are on an axis with each other, just as SI demon and SE inferior are in orbit with each other. What this means is that when an INFJ becomes, or an INTJ becomes familiar with something, familiar with a practice, they become able to, become equipped to be able to predict certain things about it. So, for example, if you're playing Call of Duty or something, and you play a certain map 5 or 10 times or 20 times or 100 times, there comes a switch when the INJ can start to understand that space without having to think about it. And that infuses their predictive capacity to not have to think about the intentions of others or think about the layout, and it allows them to just move seamlessly throughout, right? So the key really is, can you predict, right? And practice is really just the SI demon becoming familiar with something, right? And of course, both INJ types, when they stop practicing, they often lose that sense of familiarity really quickly, but they can also get it back extremely quickly. So to wrap up here is the concept of the cognitive circuits, which if you haven't heard of those, we talk extensively about those in the Ego Hack Your Fear course. They are the central vehicle, we believe, to cognitive integration, but also just learning how to optimize our inferior function, optimize our nemesis function, optimize for the INJs, optimize their performance. I'll also link an article that introduced the cognitive circuits. I believe it was last year, but what they are is the connection of energy between the 4 gateway functions, right? So the demon, the gateway of the superego, is in communication, or the information that flows to it flows to the nemesis, flows to the inferior, and flows up to the hero too. So in our hero, what I want relates to the nemesis of what's possible, what am I not seeing, relates to SE inferior. What can I do? Where can I start my vision? Where can I start what I want in a concrete action that moves towards the result I'm looking for? And then SI demon is connected to that too, of what am I, what is my past? What is my history? What is my memory? What is my skills, right? And ultimately what the demon function is looking for is for the NI heroes to give up their sense of pride when they imagine to themselves that just because they want something enough that they deserve to be great at it right away, right? The demon's looking for for that pride to be let go of, and for the INJ to actually be willing to put in the effort to perform, to practice rather. And once they practice, the power of the SI demon is drawn from immediately, right? And then basically the inferior function and the nemesis function, the ME nemesis and the SE inferior are supercharged with practice. And they can learn extremely fast. They can become competent extremely quickly when the INJ chooses to engage in practice, right? So the simple answer is it's anticipation plus reaction that makes the INJs potentially superior at performance, usually within their specific craft, when enough practice has been enabled, right? So the last point here to make is just a simple question of, how does an INJ know when they are on this path and when they have reached certain checkpoints of competence over their skills? And this is perhaps a somewhat contentious point, but in my opinion, it's really a simple test. And that is, it has to come back to our home court. It has to come back to our hero function. And the NI hero for the INJs is all about what I want, my path, my vision, how I see things playing out, especially in a performance context. So what does this mean? What is the test of this? The test of when an INJ becomes really good at something, potentially great, is when they can seamlessly do what they want, when they can act out what they want without having to think about it, without having to get stuck, when their body and their actions align, kind of align closely, align without friction. When what they want, when what they see in their heads is able to be carried out pristinely by their actions, where their body, which is often repressed with SI demon, but through practice, their body and their vision, their NI vision, become one, where they can act out their vision precisely and pristinely. So that is the test. When they get to the point where the way they want to do it, where they can do it the way they want to do it, that's basically the point where an INJ, in my opinion, has become at least very competent, potentially great at something. So anyway, that is the secret for why INJs can be so supreme at performing. And also know that it takes a lot for them to get to that point, right? Because they have to pick something. They have to choose a path, choose a skill, choose a sport, choose a game, choose something, choose a craft, right? That they want to invest their effort into. And ultimately, an INJ's effort with their SI demon, an INFJ and INTJ's effort, is the most valuable resource that they can give, because it's the hardest for them to give. That's something that Chase taught me, and that's a lesson I keep very close to my heart. So anyway, folks, thanks for tuning in. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. And yeah, we'll see you guys next time.